Nearly every grocery store category is more expensive today than it was a year ago. You're not imagining it. $100 feels like it gets you very little at the grocery store these days.
Food prices started rising rapidly during COVID, and since then, food inflation has slowed, but prices are still going up.
That is despite promises from then candidate Donald Trump that he would get food prices down if elected. He didn't.
So let's get into why grocery prices are skyrocketing again, and why the future of them isn't likely to bring much relief. August of this year saw the largest month-over-month increase in food at home prices since August of 2022. While it may not sound like a lot at just 0.6%, it's really the year-over-year increase of 3.2% on top of the already elevated increases that we've seen over the last few years. Now, to be clear, when the Bureau of Labor Statistics says food, they are including food away from home, which is restaurants, fast food, etc. And food at home is grocery prices. So while food at home is up 2.7% year over year, food away from home is up almost 4% year over year, which is brutal when eating out already felt unaffordable for most people. Now remember, the Federal Reserve's target inflation rate is 2%. So when we break down some of these costs a bit further, year over year coffee is up almost 21%, beef is up nearly 14%, and eggs are up almost 11%. Fruits and vegetables overall were up 2.3% year over year, but certain ones like apples were up over 9.5%, while bananas were up over 6.5%.
What's the tariff on bananas? Americans, by the way, love bananas. We buy billions of them a year.
The tariff on bananas would be representative of the countries that produce them.
And what's that tariff?
Generally 10%.
Correct, 10%. Walmart has already increased the cost of bananas by 8%.
But as countries do deals with us, that will go to zero. As countries do deals with us, that will go to zero.
But the cost is on the American consumer now and on the businesses with the confusion now.
There's no uncertainty. If you build in America and you produce your product in America, there will be no tariff.
We can't produce bananas in America.
Building in America and paying no tariff is very, very clear.
We cannot build bananas in America.
Now, until Howard Lutnick teaches the rest of us how to grow bananas domestically, I think we gotta expect higher prices here. But here's the bigger picture in all seriousness. When we zoom out, we know that after COVID, both grocery store prices and restaurant prices have been up a lot. This isn't an issue that was exclusive to the United States. Every country dealt with some form of inflation after the pandemic. But since 2020, grocery prices are up almost 30% in the US, while food away from home is up even more than that. All of this has been compounding year after year, and month-to-month numbers don't capture the cumulative hit. So I often find when discussing the month-over-month or even year-over-year price increases, it sometimes feels like the broader context is missing because every price increase just stacks on top of that last one, making the cost of living even more unmanageable throughout the country. So what's driving the current price increases? Well, there's no single reason, but one of the biggest culprits is tariffs. Foods the US can't grow, like coffee, bananas, and others, get hit with import taxes when they come from abroad. In 2024, Brazil supplied the US with about 35% of its imported coffee beans, nearly $2 billion worth. And since the US can't grow coffee domestically, at least not at scale, that dependence means tariffs hit immediately. Importers are now paying a 50% tariff on Brazilian coffee, introduced by Trump for no good reason. On top of that, other countries that supply the US with coffee, like Vietnam, Colombia, Ethiopia, and others, face tariffs as well. While not as high as 50%, they are still substantial price hikes from even just last year. And recently, Brazilian exports have fallen off a cliff, down 46% in August. This is going to continue to have impacts on pricing throughout the country. Now, beef prices are also surging right now, becoming one of the biggest pain points for consumers. Supply is extremely tight. The US cattle herd has fallen to multi-decade lows after years of drought and high feed costs. And the USDA says inventories as of mid-2025 remain historically depressed. Tight supply plus steady demand means record beef prices that are still moving higher. In July, the BLS noted that the beef and veal category was roughly 11% higher year over year, and August just showed another jump month over month. Now, when you add in elevated feed, fuel, and labor costs, rebuilding that herd takes years, not months. That's why the USDA expects retail beef prices to remain stubbornly high well into 2026. And this is where Trump's promise to lower prices really breaks down. On the 2024 campaign trail, he said he would actually lower grocery prices for American families, multiple times, mind you. He literally declared, "We are going to bring those prices way down."
Everything is bad, and we're going to straighten it out. We're going to bring prices way down, and we'll get it done fast. It'll also bring your grocery bill way down.
But shortly after he was elected, during an interview with Time magazine, he admitted the opposite. He said, quote, "It's very hard to bring things down once they're up." Now, he's not wrong there. Despite walking it back after the fact, it is quite unrealistic for presidents on their own to be able to lower prices of things like groceries. Of course, policies can and do affect certain prices, but presidents don't have some dial under their desk to turn up or down. However, with that said, what they do have the power to do instead is enact policies that wind up raising prices, and that's precisely what he has done with tariffs and this trade war. Economists from the Yale Budget Lab have estimated Trump's tariffs will cost US households about $2,400 this year. Now, obviously, this isn't all from groceries, but it does go to show you that cheaper prices aren't coming. And yet the pitch worked because people clearly wanted to believe that tariffs meant lower costs, when the reality is tariffs function much more like a sales tax. They make imports more expensive, and that filters through the supply chain to things like coffee, bananas, and even fertilizers that the US needs to grow crops here domestically. So instead of easing the inflation pressure on families, tariffs only added another layer to it. Now, while certain grocers have been saying to their investors that they are absorbing some of these tariffs and trying not to pass on the full price increases to their customers, I think those days are numbered. One of the main reasons businesses have been absorbing some of the tariffs is because these tariffs haven't been implemented in a straightforward manner. They've been on, then off, then on, then they've gone up, then down, and now they're headed to the Supreme Court to see if they're actually legal. So retailers have held back on passing on the full amount to customers because if the tariffs revert, the retailers don't want to have to then lower prices. But make no mistake, retailers are not eating all of the tariffs, and they're likely to eat much less of them, especially if the courts rule that they can stay. Now, another factor that is sort of a hidden driver here is shrinkflation. It's not as obvious as the headline CPI number, but consumers definitely feel it. Cereal boxes are thinner, chip bags have more air than product, and even drinks have been quietly downsized a few ounces.
The fact that manufacturers continue to find new ways to shrink products that have already been downsized, according to Consumer World's Ed Dworsky.
There's almost no category of product except eggs, maybe, that hasn't been downsized over the past years.
Companies like PepsiCo and General Mills leaned on this tactic heavily over the last few years, pairing it with outright price hikes. Executives openly admitted they had pricing power, meaning people kept buying even at higher prices. And once corporations saw consumers adapt, they had no real incentive to roll prices back until, of course, demand slows. Now, I did a whole video on shrinkflation earlier in the year, and you can check that out if you want, but I just have to say it's quite a disgusting tactic that is becoming more and more common these days. Now, another factor here is labor. This is something that is baked into what you pay at the register. Agriculture has long been hit by chronic worker shortages, especially for seasonal harvesting, and wages for farm labor have risen sharply over the years. The American Farm Bureau warns that producers can't find enough labor, and reports show agricultural labor costs in 2025 are forecasted at over $53 billion. Immigration crackdowns are only making this worse. An article from Foodprint in August of this year notes that ICE raids and stricter enforcement are increasing fear among undocumented and documented workers alike, and they're reducing the available workforce as a result. Another recent analysis suggested that over 500,000 immigrants losing work authorization could further reduce supply and push food prices up. Some projections put that increase at 14.5% over 2024 to 2028 for food and related goods. And lastly, there's a weather and water problem. California grows nearly half of all US vegetables and over 3/4 of its fruits and nuts. But several parts of the state have faced sharply reduced water allocations, making it much harder for farmers to keep output steady. And it's not just California, because droughts, heat waves, and floods across the US and abroad have all cut into harvests and disrupted supply chains. The end result is all the same: tighter supply and higher prices passed directly onto the consumer. So when you put all of this together, tariffs, shrinkflation, labor costs, weather shocks, and corporate greed, you see why food inflation feels relentless. It's not just one factor, it's a stack of pressures hitting simultaneously, amplified worse by corporations having little incentive to give up the margins that they've gained over the previous years. Now, I want to be clear, I'm not saying the sky is falling, but when politicians promise to bring prices down, the reality is harsh. Food almost never gets cheaper. The best we can realistically hope for is slower growth, or at least policies that don't make the situation worse. But in today's environment, the odds of your grocery bill actually shrinking are basically zero. Now, if you enjoyed this video and you want to learn about America's new debt trap, well, I covered it in this video here. Please check it out next. Thanks for watching.